Hi, once again, welcome to likeitwideopen.com. And I just wanted to do a series on mirrorless cameras, right? A lot of people ask me which camera to buy. Now, actually, they don't even ask which camera to buy. Which SLR should I buy? Now, the assumption being that if I buy an SLR, I'm going to get better, and probably that's like the best out there, which currently is a myth. Now, why do I say that? So let's understand this, right? What really determines a good image quality, right? Now, let's say other things remaining the same, your talent level and everything else remaining the same. What really determines picture quality? There are two things actually. If you really, primarily, I would say there are two, right? One is the image sensor, which is equivalent of the film you had in the film age. The sensors, are now the medium by which the image is captured in the camera instead of film. So the quality of the sensor is absolutely important. And the second is the quality of lenses. And we'll come to the lenses later. But first, let's understand that the sensors nowadays are pretty much absolutely very similar between SLRs and mirrorless cameras. In fact, you'll be surprised to know that Sony actually supplies a lot of sensors to Nikon. So the Nikon D810, which probably had one of the best sensors for Nikon, was actually a Sony sensor. So obviously Sony cameras, have evolved. Sony has great sensors. Leica has got phenomenal sensors. Olympus, although their sensor size is small, and I'll come to that in a minute, but they have amazing sensors. Fuji has developed, its own sensors, and they are absolutely stunning. So right now, the image quality is absolutely, nothing to really, nothing to really determine whether you need to go for an SLR or mirrorless, given that both of them pretty much have the same or similar, sensor quality. Now, let's also understand a little bit of science behind how the mirrorless camera works, the sensor out of the way. Now, this probably is one of the oldest Canon DSLRs ever made, D300. This was my first DSLR, bought in 2000. And if you see here, there's a mirror. Now, this is the difference between the DSLR and a mirrorless camera, right? Now, when you take a picture in an SLR, the mirror basically goes up. The mirror goes up, and there's a shutter behind that. The shutter opens, and the sensor is right behind that, and the image falls on the sensor. Now, in a mirrorless camera, if you'll see, there is no mirror. It's directly the sensor. So there's a lens, and there's a shutter, and then there's a sensor. Now, the second important thing is how you view the picture before you click the picture in an SLR, right? So if you see the mirror is at an angle, light falls, or the image goes through the lens, falls on the mirror, gets reflected, and at the top there is something called a pentaprism, which basically works like a periscope, and then you see the image through here. Now this is all optical, right? There is no electronics in this. It's largely optical. And it's basically working on the principle of a periscope. So what happens is when you click the picture, the mirror goes up and there's a blackout because the mirror has gone up and shut your pentaprism, and then the picture falls. Now, how does a mirrorless work? So in a mirrorless, since there is no mirror, the image actually directly falls on the sensor, and there is something called sensor readout, right? So the electronics inside, they read the image falling on the sensor, and there is something called an electronic viewfinder. So you see the image from here. Basically, it's exactly the same image that is falling on the sensor. You're actually viewing the image that is already falling on the sensor. So here is the advantage, right? Now, if your picture is underexposed or overexposed, there is no way to know that in a DSLR, because you're not seeing what is falling on the sensor, but you're seeing an optical image. But here, since you're seeing exactly what is falling on the sensor, you can actually underexpose and overexpose and then see what's happening. The if your image is overexposed, you will be able to see it through the viewfinder, and you can adjust your exposure. If it's underexposed, you can see it, you can increase your exposure, that's visible through this. Now, the problem with that was that in earlier mirrorless cameras, the sensor readout rate, the refresh rate was very less. Because of that, in low light, there would be a huge lag in viewing the picture through the electronic viewfinder. But that's changed now. The refresh rates are amazing. The Sony A7R2 has one of the fastest refresh rates, and there is hardly any difference between what you see here and what you see here, right? And that's the same with Fuji, Olympus, pretty much, all the mirrorless cameras. So that advantage of seeing through the electronic viewfinder what is falling on the sensor is just an amazing advantage over the DSLR. And the disadvantage which came along with it, essentially the refresh rates and the lag, is now gone. So it's absolutely amazing right now. Now, the third point is very important, is the focus speed. Let me also qualify this, right? And let me say, if 90% of the time what you shoot, or even 60 or 70% of the time what you shoot, is birds, wildlife, cars, and sports, mirrorless is not for you. Their focusing speed, lenses are still not there. The tracking, actually, focusing speeds are still there, with tracking ability, but then even in DSLRs which are not pro grade, you really cannot do that. So you really need a pro grade DSLR, to really do that with pro grade lenses. But that aside, anything else you can do with this, you can do with this. Now, focusing speed used to be pretty slow in the mirrorless cameras earlier. Like I had a Fuji X Pro 1, which was terrible, which was really slow. And that was because mirrorless cameras used to use technology called contrast detection. So for example, if you're shooting this white wall or a black, and which is true even in face detection, but just as an example, the mirrorless camera would find it very difficult because it needed areas of contrast to really fix focus on. So in low light, they used to hunt a lot, and all those problems existed. But now, and the SLR uses something called phase detection, right? So this mirror you see is not exactly an opaque mirror. It's kind of a translucent mirror. It allows slight light to pass through it, and there are sensors which are used for focusing, and that's why the SLRs have very fast focus. Now they have replicated that in mirrorless also. So mirrorless right now uses contrast as well as phase detection, which is PHASE phase, right? And therefore the focusing speeds are absolutely comparable between mirrorless and DSLRs, except for the fact that pro grade DSLRs have amazing amount of tracking ability, which is great for sports, wildlife, birding, etc., right? Which mirrorless still finds a little bit of a struggle. But then, how many of us really shoot wildlife and sports and birds all the time? So if you're shooting people, weddings, landscapes, whatever, this is right up there. You don't have to worry at all. So three things, right? Sensor quality, absolutely fine. Focusing speeds, absolutely fine, except for wildlife and birding and sports. And advantage of actually seeing what you're going to click before you click. That really gives a great amount of advantage to the mirrorless over DSLRs. The other fact also is the size of the lenses, right? I mean, if you really, and okay, let me tell you this. This probably is the most amateur DSLR you can find in the market, or you used to. I don't have any DSLRs. I stopped clicking with DSLRs like a year and a half back. And this probably is the biggest mirrorless you'll find. So the smallest DSLR is the same size as the largest mirrorless, right? Pretty much any mirrorless that you see is fairly the same size as this or smaller, right? Whereas if you go for pro grade Canon cameras and Nikon cameras, they should be easily, probably double the height and slightly bigger width and obviously thicker. So that's a great advantage with mirrorless. I mean, I know a lot of people who buy DSLRs and leave them at home because they don't want to carry 2 or 3 lenses along with the DSLR and go around whole day traveling, and if they're hiking or walking or trekking or doing something like that. Whereas mirrorless, you can just hang it around your shoulder whole day and you're not going to feel any kind of pain. I mean, I used to lug a lot of DSLRs and lenses and actually started having problems in my shoulder and neck, and which has kind of completely vanished from the time I took to mirrorless, right? So these are few advantages. In the second part, we'll see a few more advantages. We'll see lenses, size of lenses, the number of lenses that each system has in mirrorless, and a few other things. But till then, if you have any questions, feel free to comment. Feel free to leave questions. I can always attempt to answer those. And see you again in a bit. Thanks for watching. Bye.